It was a cold evening in a quiet town nestled between rolling hills, the kind of evening where the air carried a melancholy heaviness, and the streets glistened with rain that had been falling since noon. The sky was a dull gray, the sun hidden behind thick clouds, and the sound of raindrops tapping against the pavement created a rhythm that matched the heaviness in Ayla's chest. She sat alone on an old wooden bench in the town's central park, her posture slouched, her eyes fixed on a faded photograph in her trembling hands. The picture, its edges curled and colors faded from time, showed a man with soft hazel eyes and a smile that had once been her entire world. His name was Adel, and though years had passed since that photo had been taken, she could still remember every detail of his face as clearly as if he were sitting beside her now. Ayla's breath came out shaky as she brushed her thumb over the image. The park was almost empty, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves carried by the cold wind. She felt the dampness of the bench seeping through her clothes, but she didn't care. It was here, in this very park, that she had once sat with Adel, laughing under the summer sun, planning their future, dreaming about the life they would build together. Now all that remained were memories and an ache in her heart that never truly went away. "I miss you," she whispered softly, her voice breaking as the words were swallowed by the wind. Her mind drifted back to the first day she met him, a memory so vivid that she could almost smell the scent of old books and coffee. She had been working at a small bookstore, one of those cozy shops tucked away on a quiet street, with worn wooden floors and shelves packed tightly with novels, poetry, and history books. It had been raining that day too, though the rain then had felt softer, warmer, as if it were a gentle blessing rather than a heavy sorrow. She had been arranging a display of books near the front of the shop when he walked in, dripping wet from the sudden downpour. His dark hair clung to his forehead, and his hazel eyes sparkled with amusement as he shook the water from his jacket. "Do you have any recommendations for someone who doesn't read much?" he had asked, his voice deep yet gentle. Ayla had looked up at him and smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "That depends," she said playfully. "Are you looking for something to pass the time, or are you ready to fall in love with reading?" "Fall in love," he'd replied with a grin that made her heart skip a beat. She handed him a copy of The Alchemist, telling him it was a book that had changed her life, and told him to come back when he was finished. She didn't expect to see him again so soon, but 3 days later, he returned, the book in his hand and excitement in his eyes. "I loved it," he had said simply, and from that moment, something between them had shifted. It started with conversations about books, but soon, their talks drifted into deeper territory, dreams, fears, childhood memories they had never told anyone else. They spent hours in the corner of that bookstore, sipping coffee and laughing as if they had known each other their whole lives. Ayla had always been cautious with her heart, hesitant to let anyone in, but Adel had a warmth about him that made her feel safe, like she could be herself without fear of judgment. Their friendship blossomed into love so effortlessly that it almost felt like fate. He began to stop by the bookstore every day, sometimes to buy a book, sometimes just to see her. They went on long walks through the park, talking about everything and nothing, holding hands as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Adel was a photographer, with dreams of traveling the world, capturing beauty through his lens. Ayla, on the other hand, dreamed of one day opening her own bookstore cafe, a cozy place where people could find comfort in stories just like she always had. They promised each other that no matter what life threw their way, they would chase their dreams together. Those were days filled with laughter, warmth, and hope. Ayla remembered the way his eyes would light up when he talked about his photography, the way he'd gently tuck her hair behind her ear, the way he'd whisper that she was his favorite view in the world. It was a love so deep and pure that she thought nothing could ever break it. But life has a way of testing love in ways that no one is ever prepared for. It started small. Adel had a cough that wouldn't go away. He brushed it off, insisting it was just a cold, but as weeks turned into months, the cough worsened, and he grew more tired. Ayla begged him to see a doctor, and when he finally did, their lives changed forever. The diagnosis was devastating: stage 4 lung cancer. The doctors said it was aggressive and had already spread too far. They gave him months, maybe a year, to live. Ayla felt like her world had shattered that day. She couldn't comprehend how the man who had brought so much light into her life was now being consumed by darkness. But she refused to let him face it alone. She became his strength, his caretaker, his anchor. She was there for every chemotherapy session, every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night when the pain became unbearable. She would hold his hand and whisper stories to him when he was too weak to lift a book. She smiled for him, even when her heart was breaking, because she wanted him to know that he was loved until the very end. Despite the pain, their love only grew stronger during those months of suffering. Adel, even in his weakest moments, would look at her with those soft hazel eyes and say, "You're my reason to smile." He never stopped trying to make her laugh, even when he was the one fighting for his life. There were days when Ayla would cry in the bathroom, muffling her sobs so he wouldn't hear, and then come out with a smile, pretending everything was okay. She wanted to be strong for him, even when it felt like her heart was breaking into pieces every day. One sunny afternoon, when the cherry blossoms were in full bloom, Adel surprised her by proposing under the very tree where they had shared their first kiss. He was frail, his body weakened by months of treatment, but his eyes were filled with determination as he got down on one knee. "I don't know how much time I have left," he whispered, his voice trembling, "but I know I want to spend every second of it with you." Ayla's tears fell freely as she said yes. They had a small, intimate wedding with close family and friends. Adel was too weak to stand for long, so they exchanged vows while sitting, holding hands tightly, their eyes never leaving each other. The day was filled with love and laughter, and for a brief moment, it felt like time had stopped. They promised to love each other not just until death, but beyond it. But time was not on their side. Adel's condition worsened, and soon he was spending most of his days in bed, too weak to move. Ayla never left his side. She read him stories, played his favorite songs, and held him as he drifted in and out of sleep. On a rainy morning, with the soft sound of raindrops against the window, Adel took her hand and whispered, "Thank you, for loving me." His voice was barely audible, but she heard every word. And then, just like that, he was gone. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ayla felt like her heart had been ripped out of her chest. She sat there, holding his hand long after his last breath, as tears streamed down her face. The love of her life was gone, and the world felt empty without him. For months after his passing, Ayla couldn't bring herself to leave the house. She lived in a haze of grief, replaying their memories over and over again. She clung to his photograph like a lifeline, whispering to him every night, telling him how much she missed him. The once warm and vibrant home they had shared now felt cold and lifeless. But slowly, she began to heal. She started writing letters to Adel, pouring out her thoughts and feelings on paper, as if he could still hear her. She told him about her days, her pain, and the memories they had shared. Writing became her way of coping, her way of keeping him close even though he was gone. Eventually, she found the courage to fulfill one of their shared dreams. With the savings they had put aside, Ayla opened the bookstore cafe they had always talked about. She named it Adel's Corner, in his honor. The shop became a cozy haven, filled with books, soft music, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. People from all walks of life came to visit, and Ayla found comfort in knowing she was keeping his dream alive. One day, while sitting in the cafe, she noticed a young boy sitting alone at a table, reading a book. He looked no older than 10, and his clothes were worn and shabby. She walked over and asked him if he wanted something to eat. He shook his head shyly and said he didn't have any money. Ayla's heart ached as she handed him a sandwich and a cup of hot chocolate, telling him it was on the house. The boy's face lit up with joy, and something inside her shifted. That encounter inspired her to start a program at the cafe to provide free books and meals to underprivileged children. Over time, Adel's Corner became more than just a bookstore. It became a safe space for children, a place where dreams were nurtured and hope was restored. Though she had lost the love of her life, she found a new purpose: to spread kindness and light, just as Adel had always done. Years passed, but Ayla never forgot him. She carried his love with her every day, in everything she did. On the anniversary of his passing, she would visit the park, sit on the same wooden bench where they had once sat together, and talk to him. She'd tell him about the children she'd helped, the laughter she'd heard in the cafe, and the lives they had touched because of him. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ayla sat on that bench, holding his photograph. The pain was still there, but it had softened over the years. She smiled through her tears, feeling his presence in the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves. "You're still with me," she whispered, and she knew it was true. Their love had not ended. It had simply changed form. It lived on in her heart, in the cafe, in the lives of every child who walked through those doors. It was a love that had defied time, a love that had left an indelible mark on her soul. And as she sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she realized that true love never dies. It becomes a part of us, guiding us, shaping us, and reminding us that even in the darkest of nights, there will always be light.